ladies and gentlemen, as all you know, this is my first time attempting a podcast, and I managed to get a Rangers legend to come onto the podcast. So here he is, Mr. Derek Parlane. I can't thank you enough, Derek.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. We're going to do well. Don't worry about it.
I hope so. So at the end of the day, like we said, just let you tell your story, because you lived the dream. You lived every little Rangers player, Rangers fan all over the world's dream.
I did. And I was never to know how good it would all become, because I grew up supporting the Rangers. My dad used to play for the Rangers. My dad played only a handful of games, or obviously interrupted by the Second World War. But he played 6 times for Rangers. And you know what? We're the only father and son to have scored a goal against Celtic, that played for Rangers, to have scored against Celtic. So I'm that. But I always wanted to play. I played football at primary school, and then I played at secondary school. I loved the game, and then I went to play for a team that hardened me up a wee bit in Dumbarton, called Dumbarton Castle Rovers.
Aye.
And I got spotted playing for them by Queen's Park.
Aye.
And Queen's Park, I got a call from a great ex-Rangers player called Harry Davis. You've probably heard of Harry Davis.
I heard the name.
And Harry was the coach at Queen's Park, and he contacted me and says, "Derek, would love you to come up and train with us." And I did. And I went up and trained with him for a night a week when I was 16.
Aye. And then so see, when the knock came, see when you walked into Ibrox for the first time, what's that feeling like? Because I've walked into the main door at Ibrox 4 times, and when I walk in there, it's an unbelievable feeling just to walk in there, because I know who's been in that door. You know what I mean?
Well, after the process was like this, Frankie. After I was at Queen's Park a night a week just training, and didn't think anything would become of it. Then there was a game against the Cream of Scotland under-18s against Queen's Park, and Harry Davis said, "Derek, I'm going to play you here, son. You're only 16 and a half, but I'm going to play." And it was on Lesser Hampden, which was actually as good as Hampden.
Aye.
And he said, "I'm going to play you this night, 16 and a half against under-18s." And I scored 2 goals. We beat them 2-1. And then next day, the phone was ringing to my mum and dad's house, and Dad says there's a few clubs interested. A couple of English. Dad, I'm not going to England. Don't want to go to England. I want to play for. I want to play for the Rangers. And then he says, "Well, Aberdeen wanted to sign you." I said, "Dad, I'm not going. You know, I'm not going to play for them." He says, "Well, look, they'll come down." But anyway, they came down the next day, and my dad offered me schoolboy forms, and my dad says, "No." He says to me, "We've got the Rangers coming tomorrow." And my dad hadn't told me the Rangers were coming tomorrow, Frankie.
Right.
So I'm sat. I turned to my dad after Eddie Turnbull and the great coach for Aberdeen called Bobby Calder had left. I said, "Dad, you kidding? Rangers are coming." He said, "We've got Willie Waddle and Willie Thornton coming in to see you."
No, big names.
I know. So I'll never forget. He says, "Listen, leave it all to me, son," because, you know, I said, "Dad, don't worry. I can't even believe they're coming into our living room in our house in this wee village in Scotland." And they came out, and cut a long story short, Frankie, I signed professional terms that day.
Aye.
So in a week, I was getting on the bus in a wee village, going into 2 miles into Helensburgh, train up to Glasgow, and then walking up in this underground out to Copeland Road, and then knocking on the front door at Ibrox, 16 and a half. And I remember knocking on that front door. This is a true story. And we had a doorman called Bobby Moffat, and Bobby was an old bloke, horn rim glass, he was like really peering at you, and he big jumper tucked into his trousers, and he was a commissionaire at the time.
Okay.
And I pushed the door open and nothing happened, and I knocked on the door, and he came to the door and he says, "What is it, son?" I said, "Well, he says, my name's Derek Parlane. I've come to play for the Rangers."
Aye.
"What's your name?" I said, "Derek Parlane." He says, "Right, hang on a minute, son." He shut the door and locked it on me, and came back 5 minutes later. He opened the door and he says, "Listen, son, I've heard you're going to be a good player. You go down there in the first team dressing room and change with the first team."
That's unreal.
I've been down at the dressing room, all these every one of them I had up in the wall in my bedroom, and
Aye.
this Paul Steen, there's Willie Johnson, there's John Gregg, there's
Aye.
a young lad came and sat beside me, Frankie, by the name of Derek Johnson.
DJ, aye. But I mean, aye. So, you cut out a bit there, Derek. Sorry. You said Derek Johnson sat next to you.
Big DJ, and he says to me, what's your name? I says, my name's Derek. What's your name? He says, my name's Derek. I says, how you feeling? How you feeling, DJ? Derek? He says, I'm shitting myself, actually, Derek. I says, how you feeling? He says, I'm shitting myself too. So we went out and trained that day with the first team.
Aye. So I mean, like I would call him Mr. Gregg. Like John Gregg, that's a big presence. What was he like with you? Because I'm assuming he was a captain at that point.
He was a captain. He was magnificent, Frankie. To be honest with you, he kind of took me under his wing when he, because you get the pee extracted out of you when you go into the dressing room.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. And to be honest, I went home after my first day training, and I'd had my shoes nailed to the dressing room floor, and all my clothes, and talcum powder everywhere. And I went home nearly crying. My dad was waiting in the house. I'll never forget, my dad sat in the window in a house in a wee village. And I walked in, he says, how do you on, son? I said, Dad, I don't think I like it.
Aye.
But Greggy took me under his wing. Answer your question, Greggy was magnificent.
Aye. The thing is, I mean, that hazing, whatever you call it, I got it in the Royal Navy when I joined up as well. There's a bit of me wonders, should they still do that? But the thing is, in this day and age, they'd be shooting on the phone to the agent. Oh, you called me a bad name or something, or hit me, but that's the way it was.
But Frankie, on that note, I often get asked, you not miss playing football, Derek? I says, well, I get to the stage where I know I can't play anymore. So, you've got to move. I can't live in the past. But I tell you what I miss as much as anything is the dressing room.
The banter. Aye.
And you get it in your job, you'll get it, that dressing room, that dressing room camaraderie and atmosphere. It's nothing like it.
We call it the tea shack. That it's kind of as it says, sitting there with your cup of tea, and you still need to be thick-skinned. I mean, it's not bullying, but it's a very manly environment, and it's similar to when it was in the Royal Navy, and it was similar to any kind of a boys' club, shall we call it? I mean,
in many ways, Frankie, it's a terms of endearment, because they wouldn't do it if they didn't like you, I don't think.
Exactly. And the thing is, see, for us offshore, because we're getting stuck in each other, but 5 minutes time, because things can go wrong offshore very quickly. I might be walking past the room and somebody's on the floor, and you're like, we've got procedures, or you hit the alarm, or you shout and scream, you might have to pull somebody out somewhere. And I think the environment of taking the mick at each other helps you bond even more, you know what I mean, for something like that,
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah, that was my first day, and it was fabulous. It was fabulous.
What was your first game when you were you a sub, or did you start your first game?
I played a couple of games in the first team. I mean, the big moment in my career, obviously, I'll come on to in a minute, but and I think we know what that is, when we were in the Cup Winners' Cup, which is now the Europa League.
Yeah.
And I'd been played a couple of games before the semi-final against Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
I was only 18, and I played in a couple of games. One against, I think it was Clyde. One against Falkirk. Played in the midfield because I was a midfield player, believe it or not. I wasn't a striker, and didn't think I'd done particularly well. But I hadn't even travelled with or been involved in any of the games in the Cup Winners' Cup. Rennes wasn't involved. We went through that. Sporting Lisbon, no. Torino, no. And then we get to Bayern Munich, and I'm picked in the squad to travel to Munich. And that was the first time I'd been on an aeroplane. That was a great experience for me. But not only that, but to travel with the boys, and you get to know men. You'll know that more than me, Frankie. You get to know when you're traveling and living with them, pretty much. So, and we got battered that night, but we came away with a draw. And I sat in the stand and watched it, and I was blown away by the whole experience. And we brought it back 2 weeks later.
And then what happened that game?
I'm going to help you relive a wee bit of the of the whole situation, because I'll talk about it now,
Aye.
and the memories. You know, my hair's still got in the back of my neck.
Aye.
I was in the squad, and my dad, my brother, my dad's mates were all going to the game, and I mean, John Gregg was injured that night. My dad says, "Son, do you think you might have a wee chance of getting on the bench?" And I says, "Dad, that would be beyond my wildest dreams if I got on the bench. I think Alfie Corn will play number 4 that night to replace Greggy." And anyway, we came. Well, I remember the dressing room. I remember the stadium. I remember the place was electric before the game. It was sparking. It was absolutely sparking. And our dressing rooms are on the Copeland Road, right on the Copeland Road, and we could hear the window was open. We could hear the crowd. We could hear the atmosphere. 80,000 Rangers fans in there that night. And anyway, Jock Wallace called us into the dressing room. He says, "Sit down, lads. Here's the team for tonight." Honestly, my hairs are up in the back of my neck. He says, "Right, number 1, it's an hour and a half before the game. Number 1, Peter McCloy. Number 2, Sandy Jardine. God love you, Sandy. Number 3, Billy Marston. Number 4, Derek Parlane. Number 5, 6, 7. Honestly, Frank, I never heard another. I wouldn't have known who else was playing after me, but I heard him number 4, and he says, "Derek, son, come on, I need to speak to you in the boot room." I felt like saying, "No, I can need to speak to you, Gaffer. What are you doing?" You know.
Aye.
He took me into the boot room and he says, "Listen, son, there's a guy plays in the middle of the park for them, a guy called Franz Roth." He says he's the one that makes it happen for them. So all we want you to do tonight is stick with him and don't make him don't give him a chance to win the ball. Just and if you get half a chance, just do the big German bastard, was what he said to me, actually.
Right, okay. I bet you couldn't say that nowadays, but it's different times.
But anyway, I went, "Okay, Gaffer," and then the buzzer went 10, quarter to 8. The buzzer went. We walk out into the tunnel, and I'll never forget that, Frankie. That I'm stood in the tunnel at Ibrox. I'm waiting for the Bayern Munich team to come out. Their door opens. Out comes Franz Beckenbauer, the greatest captain.
A genuine all-time great.
All-time great. Behind him, Sepp Maier, greatest goalkeeper they've ever had. Behind him's Gerd Müller. The great. You know, and then out comes this monster of a man called Franz Roth, who I'm meant to be marking. No, I'm about 11 and a half, and I'm 11 and a half stone wet through. And I'm looking at this lad, stood beside me, and he's about 6'2", and I'm thinking, right, I'm going to get you tonight, you know. Anyway, the game. Sandy scored a great goal in the first minute. It was a funny thing. My dad heard the team on the tannoy, so the old crackly tannoy system at Ibrox, and he says, "Was that Derek's name on there, number 4?" And he couldn't believe it either. So Sandy scored in the first couple of minutes, 1-0. And then I'm running around like a headless chicken trying to kick this guy, but I'm not getting anywhere near him. And then 21st minute, we got a corner at the Copeland Road end. No, at the Brumalon Road end, sorry. And wee Bud plays a great corner in, my punches it. And I remember it going to drop in the edge of the 18-yard box, and I think to myself, I'm not going to bother with you, Franz Roth. I'm going to get on the end of this. And my left foot, which was normally the foot I stood on, and it zipped into the top corner, and that night, Frankie, my world changed.
Some goal. I mean, I've watched it back a few times, you know, but that's you can't write that kind of stuff.
That one moment in my life changed my life, because I often wonder if I hadn't been picked, if we'd get beaten, if this, if that, where would I be sat? Right, I might not even have been speaking to you, Frankie.
I hear you. Aye.
You know.
So sorry, on you go.
Oh no, I'm just saying. Next day there was press everywhere, you know, all over me and my dad, in the front step of our house. A famous picture of me and my dad the day after, sat in the front step of our house, and this is quite sad, quite ironic, and quite sad. But everybody, my dad was a market gardener, and he had got a suit and a shirt and tie. Everybody says, "Why is your dad wearing a suit and a shirt and tie?" Always had a pair of denims and a polo shirt on. That day, it was with funeral of my dad's brother. Right the next morning, you know, but we got that picture taken, and that picture will live with me forever, you know.
Okay, yeah. So it's a big moment. So after then the King of Ibrox Park. When was the first time you heard that? Because I can't imagine what it's like hearing your name even shouted, but to have your own.
I know.
Nobody else can get that name ever.
No.
It doesn't matter if you sign Messi tomorrow. You can't take that off you.
Oh, I'm not sure. He might compete for it, but I don't know.
We could try, but we'll gladly take him.
Well, in my first season, I get the gaffer had thrown me the number 9 shirt at the beginning of the next season. I says, "What are you talking about, gaffer?" He said that. I says, "Colin Steen, who's my favourite player, Colin Steen, wears number 9, and he's scored lots of goals, you know, in the last season and in the Cup Winners' Cup." He says, "I was telling them," he says, we think we need to freshen things up. You're going to be our new number 9. I thought, gaffer, I've not played number 9 before. I hadn't played number 9 before, Frankie. I'd never played centre forward before. So it came to about Christmas. It was 23rd of December in my first season. I'd only scored 7 goals. And I wasn't sure how. I didn't think I'd done particularly well. I'm not sure whether the fans accepted me or not. But I tell you what, as soon as I scored Rangers' 4th goal against, we played East Fife that day.
Okay.
What was their stadium called? Was it Bayview or something?
That is Bayview. Aye, that sounds like that. That sounds a bit right. Aye. Somebody will correct us in the comments. Don't worry.
No, we're old geezers, so we get away with that kind of stuff.
You know? Absolutely.
So the 4th goal went 2 days before Christmas, and all of a sudden, to the tune of Noel, Noel, I hear Parlane, 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 born as the King of Ibrox Park. Well, can I tell you, that is the greatest feeling in the world. And I can Google the King of Ibrox Park now, and my name comes up.
I know, aye.
It's incredible. I'm so proud and I'm so thankful for it.
See, there's something when I was in Hong Kong a few years ago, when there was a 9 in a row for the Sevens, and the Hong Kong Rangers Supporters Club are close with the club because there's only about 40 of them. And I remember I was sitting, and see, I'm talking about you getting the number 9 slot. You guys at your level see stuff we don't. And the story is, long story short, there was a Champions League final. We were showing it the next day in the pub we were all drinking in. And there's Bomber, Ian Durant, Ron Atkinson was there, and other players. I was the first person to speak, and I'm going to tell you something, Derek. I never spoke again. You know what I mean? Because I knew they just see stuff totally. You guys see stuff we don't. You know what I mean? And I knew, and it was Bomber. He didn't give me a dig in the rings, but he was just laughing at me later. I was like, I know to shut up. You know what I mean? But so say games against Celtic then. How many times did you score against them?
I think it's 11 goals.
Aye.
It's 11 goals, and I remember my first one at Ibrox. My first full season. I'd missed the one in October, I think, my first full season, because I got an injury. And on the January, just 2nd or 3rd of January, 73, we played Celtic at Ibrox. I was always desperate to play against them. You know, I will always the dream to play for Rangers against Celtic. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
So we got a penalty just before half time, and Greggy says, "Anybody want to take this?" He wasn't going to take it. I said, "I'll take it, Gaffer." He says, "You sure, son?" I says, I'm going to take it." He says, and it was at the Celtic end, when not just a wee 300 or 400 in the corner. The whole range, that end was Rangers was, and I remember getting the ball and walking up to spot and thinking, Jesus, this is unreal, because that end behind the goal were giving me all sorts of dog's abuse. Like, you wouldn't believe they were. And can I tell you, when I put the ball in the spot, Frankie, and stepped back to take my kick, the Celtic players on the 18-yard box weren't exactly shouting good luck either, you know.
But that's that.
I was getting all from the Celtic players.
I guess you expect that. But see something. Then, right? How many trophies was it you won at Ibrox?
Oh, Frankie, I scored it.
Sorry?
I scored it.
Oh no, I know. But no, but how many? So, how many trophies did you win at Ibrox? I forgot to write that down in those notes I done.
I was as a member of 3 treble winning sides. Sorry,
Oh, wow, man.
in 2 treble winning years.
Right.
So yeah, so it was different class.
Aye. See, I know, like, in the thing, is there a player at Ibrox since you've left you think, I wish I'd played with him? There's probably a few, would guess.
It would have been great to play with Loudrup.
Aye. We had a chat about him yesterday on my page, aye.
It would have been. I was fortunate enough to play with Davy Cooper.
Right.
And Coops was different class. Very, very shy lad. Didn't want any attention. Didn't want any press. He was different class. Greg, you said, was great. We great players in our team, and the players nowadays.
Aye.
I love Coisty. Obviously, everyone loves Coisty.
Aye.
They're just, maybe not any over the last few seasons, but certainly,
of course,
prior to that, and yeah, no doubt we're going to do things current as well. I'd imagine.
I think, like, because before we were on here, we were on talking on Instagram, and we've just signed a player. I've forgotten his name already. See, as a player, right? There's a lot of fans saying now we've not signed anyone. Are they overthinking that, or what do you think as a player and a fan? Should we have had more in the door, or do we need to be patient?
No, I don't think it's unreasonable to for the fans to say things like that, because we've had such a torrid time recently, Frank. And we want the Rangers to be back where Rangers should be.
Aye.
And I've, to be honest, I've got a lot of faith in the new manager. I think he'll do all right, for us. I really do. Look forward to that. He's got experience down south. I heard him talking on the television at an interview not so long ago, and his knowledge is superb. And funnily enough, where I live here in Lytham, one of my very good friends is Davy Moyes, lives here as well.
Oh, right, okay, Doc, aye.
He lives here, and we had a pint together a few weeks ago before Russell Martin was appointed, and they were talking about the Spanish boy, and they were talking about different managers. And I said, David, what do you think with your experience? He said, I tell you one of the best coaches around is a guy called Russell Martin.
Really?
And lo and behold, we've got Russell at the ground, So I'm quite hopeful. I don't think he'll suffer fools gladly. I think I'm all right with that.
Aye.
But we need to go back to the question, Frank. I don't think the fans are unreasonable because we've had such a hard time. So we need to see players will come. Sure, players will come in, but the problem we've got a great investment but we're still just going to have to watch the pennies a little bit.
I think so. And I still think when it comes to players coming in and their agents, we're still probably a wee bit toxic. We still need to prove ourselves yet. I think a wee bit, and that's understandable from an outsider's point of view. But like we said, just as what I was talking to you on Instagram, we signed that player and that came out of nowhere. There was nobody had that. His agent obviously hadn't leaked to the press. Bournemouth hadn't leaked to the press. I like that. I like that. And that reminds me of the Souness era.
Yeah, I do. As I say, just to reiterate, I think this is going to be a different season from a probably a more fired up Rangers team.
Yeah,
a Rangers team that understands what it is like to pull that Rangers jersey on. Understand the passion in the Rangers fans and what the expectations are, because we had that. We had that. We did not lose many games at Ibrox. Ibrox should be a fourth, and it's not been the last couple of years.
That's it. My first game was 90. I've got the programme there. It was the opening of the Govan, 1981 against Liverpool. That was my first game, and I'm coming on to when it was 9 in a row. Because I'm from Dumbreck, just up the road at Bellahouston Park. I used to walk down to Ibrox when I was a kid. But when Souness came in, once the 9 in a row started, I live in I live in Thailand, between Thailand and Troon. But when we me and my mates from Troon park outside my old house, and during 9 in a row, we were walking down. We wouldn't talk about the game because we knew we were going to win. But we did know we wouldn't have dominance forever. But we never saw this coming. What's happened, and it's been sore. It's been tough to take.
Tell me about it. I'm a fan first and foremost. you know, if people ask me who do you support there, I says, why? It's a silly question. My number one team and always will be is the Glasgow Rangers. You know.
Aye, aye.
So yeah, it's the same. We're you know we're I'm feeling it. I'm suffering as much as anybody.
Absolutely.
I want us to start the season well, and I want us to win something this season, which I think we will. I think we'll win something.
I hope so. Right, going back to your career, right, the one we were talking about, the one that really interests me is your relationship with a certain Mr. Billy McNeil. You want to tell the punters that one? Because I think that's absolutely brilliant. And there's no bigger accolade as a player than what you got from Billy McNeil.
Thanks, Frankie. I just left Leeds United, and Billy McNeil came in for me. Obviously, everyone knows Caesar, the ex-Celtic captain, lifted the first European Cup for a British team in Lisbon. So he came in for me, and when I signed, I says to him, Gaffer, why did you sign me? Because I was all over you when I actually enjoyed playing against you, Gaffer, because you were aging a wee bit and I was coming in as a young. I couldn't believe you've signed me, you know, because I used to run rings around you. And he said, after my slap in the head, he said to me, "I see why I signed you, Derek." He says, because I remember you and me played in a Rangers Celtic select team in a testimonial, and I'm sure I remember exactly where it was, but I think it might have been in somebody who had played for Dunfermline. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget your attitude that night. He said in a testimonial match, you had fire in your belly and you were telling players, come on, you know, we can win this game and all that. He says, I'll never forget that. And that's why I've signed you, for that attitude that you have. And I did well for Billy McNeil. I scored my debut against, I think it was against Barnsley at Main Road. And I went on to be their top goal scorer that season. So I did impress. I scored 24 goals, but
that's all right. That was good.
I'm not even going into the bit that we fell out at the end next season. We fell out a bit with each other and I left. But anyway, that first season I did really well.
Aye. I mean, like I said, we'll talk again. You ended up in Hong Kong. What's that story? How did you end up in Hong Kong?
Well, when I was at Leeds United prior to joining City, I got a bad ankle injury at Leeds, and the manager was a great guy, a lovely man who I love him to bits. Guy called Eddie Gray, a great Scottish international.
All right, aye.
Eddie was the manager, and I was struggling to get back into the team after this bad ankle injury. And it was about October time, and he called me into his office. He says, Derek, a club from Hong Kong's come in for you just to go for 3 months. And I think it'd be good because you could go and get your fitness. I says, Eddie, what are you talking about Hong Kong? I didn't even know they played football in Hong Kong. I'm staying here with Leeds United. I want to get back in the team. No, he says, you go, son. Their season works the same as ours, Frank. You know, from July, August through to. So he said, just go for 3 months, November, December, January, and get your fitness. I'm not going, Eddie. He says, well, it's triple your salary, son, and it's tax-free. I says,
I'm off.
when does that plane leave, Gaffer? So I went out 3 months and I loved it. And middle of January, he actually phoned me, true story, phoned me, says, Derek, want you back now? I'm not coming back.
Aye.
He says, what do you mean? You know, I said, I'm not, Eddie, I love it. I'm not coming back. The only way I'll come back is if you come out here and drag me back on that plane. I'm loving it. So he let me stay, and I stayed for the season. It was great. It was a great experience. I loved it.
I love Hong Kong. For me, like, I mean, I've been, I don't know how many countries, I counted them once. I've been in about 140 countries and that. Most of that's for work, though. I land at an airport, stay at a hotel at night, chopper onto an oil rig. But we lived in Hong Kong for a year, and I think it's the best place in the world. Because you know, in January, it's not cold, but it's not boiling hot. People don't realise Hong Kong's got seasons, you know, and it's but that old airport was a good fun landing at, wasn't it?
Aye, it was. It wasn't fun. But what I did was doing a pre-season training in Hong Kong in the humidity. Oh my God, the hardest thing I've ever done.
Aye, that's it. Because people say to me, "Oh, it must be good working offshore in Australia or the Dubai." It's horrific, man. You know, I mean, I've got the coveralls on, the hard hat, and there was one time I changed my overalls 8 times in 12 hours. And I mean, it was as if it jumped in the water. And you're no better than me. You're cramping up and all that. I was getting cramped during the night in behind both knees and all that kind of stuff. But so when the football came to the end, did you want to go into the management or coaching side of things? Did you fancy that?
Well, I kind of considered. I took my coaching badge. I took my prelim coaching badge when I was living in just outside Manchester. I was in a place called Wicklow, and I went to Old Trafford and took my coaching badge with Brian Kidd, the next great at Man. And then I did a wee bit of coaching with kids around the town that I lived in, and if maybe there's a dozen kids there, two might have wanted to listen to me, the others were just were there.
Aye.
So I didn't get, and then I got approached by Reebok, the sports company, to say that we'd like you in our company because you've got a great background and we think you'd be good for us. And I ended up working for Reebok and working into quite a high position. I was there for 10 years, Frank.
Right.
So yeah, and that's predominantly what I did when I finished playing football.
Right, because I noticed the other day, because Reebok are going back into football, because I think it's one of the Middle East teams there. No, it's one of the American football teams, as in this Club World Cup thing. They're sponsored by Reebok, because I think side thing, I'm heavily into the boots. I always watch what players wear. Ryan Giggs wore Reebok for years, and he was the only person in the world that wore Reebok boots because they stopped making football boots. But they knew his profile would obviously I transport it. Right. Look, Derek, listen, that's half an hour. We said this has been absolutely brilliant. I can't thank you enough.
Have I given you enough stuff?
Okay, Derek. I mean, that's brilliant.